Gentlemen, and welcome to episode 4 of the Push Start podcast. And I'm just getting a few remaining things set up right here. Are we getting any Unfortunately, Arcane is not on the show. And neither is Red. And those are our two impressionists. But otherwise, That would be pretty fun. I don't have an impression. I don't have an impression. Not one that I know I can do well, at least. Not one that I know I can do very well. Which is a tad unfortunate, because I've always wanted to be able to have just one. I would take one. Preferably one that a lot of people know. But I would have taken one. Right, let me just get a couple more things squared away on the back end here. Make everything nice and pretty for you guys before I show myself to the world. Welcome, Slowlark. Welcome, Arcane. And thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a bit of a lighter show. Going to have a bit of a lighter show tonight. So don't worry if you were worrying. There's no reason to. I told you to stop. Knock it off. Alright. Have you stopped? Good. I'm glad. Yes, let's just get started. There we go. Now we're looking even. Hello, hello, sips of tea. Speaking of tea, I don't have any for myself tonight. So let's get started. How is it going, everybody? My name is DeMarco, and welcome to episode 4 of the Push Start podcast. We have a much lighter episode this week. I am just coming back from a week away. So I've missed pretty much everything that I could have possibly missed. I still have not even caught up on the Xbox Developer Direct. No, I have not. I haven't watched the gameplay reveal of Doom the Dark Ages. I told myself that I would do that beforehand, and I did not get around to it. So, there you go. Welcome, the Elemental Hero, the Shadow Link Dragon Wolf King. Eventually, I'm going to be able to say that without having to look. 1 week. This isn't that week. But thank you all so much for stopping by. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. For those of you that take a part in chat and are here to hang out, welcome. For those of you that are here to just listen to my voice in the background, why? It is not a pleasant one to have on for your little ear holes. So, thank you, though, for tolerating it for the next hour or so, hour and a half. Like I said, today's going to be a much shorter episode as I'm still getting myself back into the swing of things. I've been really enjoying Marvel Rivals. Anybody been jumping into Marvel Rivals at all, or is it mostly just myself? But I just it's been a game that honestly really fits that mold of, hey, I got like 35-40 minutes. I need something to sit back, decompress, and relax. Let me put on a game of Rivals. And whether you hop into the competitive mode or you hop into the casual play, I have a fun time. And I gotta say, shout out to Marvel for getting it right. Because, of course, on the flip side of things, we have, if we want to jump into one little bite-sized story, I guess, there are rumors. I know that nobody cares about this game. And the reason why I know nobody cares about this game, well, about 600 people care about this game. DC can't seem to get it right. They can't figure it out. DC had, of course, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which we talked about is now officially dead. They've killed it, and, well, honestly, that game sort of killed itself, didn't it? But there you go. So, we have Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, not so bueno, and for the 600 people out there, maybe it's one of you. Maybe it is one of you that do care. Multiverses, which was actually not that bad. It's a cool concept. You take Super Smash Brothers and you put on all of the DC, well, not even the DC, you take on all the Warner Brothers properties. Iron Giant, you get the Gremlins, throw in, you know, whatever you could possibly think of. Marvin Martian, right? Powerpuff Girls, you could do whatever you want with that. And that one is apparently rumored to be hitting its last season on season 5. So again, those live service games. We talk every single week. I feel like we can hop on and talk about, hey, this live service game is gone. That live service game is gone. Oh, hey, that one seems good. Oh, it's gone already. All right. Well, that's fine. By the time we get to talking about, hey, have you heard of such and such live service game? 3 of them have already kind of bit the bullet. It's a shame. It's a shame. And we know that studios are trying to make these live service titles because, well, they can possibly make a lot of money. And a lot of studios are figuring out that by the time they maybe can make a lot of money, they've already lost much more. So, multiverses is going away. That's not the main topic today. I don't even know how I got on that subject, honestly. Dom, hey man, I'm here, but can't speak much because I'm at work. Well, have a great day at work, but I appreciate you stopping by, Dom. It's great to see you. Glad you're doing well. I saw you commenting on Lone stuff as well. Lone Vault Wanderer is sort of reshaping how he structures his channel, so be sure to check that out if you are interested. Let me just make sure the music... Alright, music sounds pretty good, I think. But welcome, Dom. Thank you so much for stopping by. It's always a pleasure to have you here, man. Yeah, so that wasn't the main topic of today, but just thought, I don't know how I got on that tangent. Oh, I was talking about Marvel Rivals. DC can't seem to get it right, but Marvel, they absolutely can. How's everybody doing tonight? How is everybody hanging? How has everybody been? We missed last week, and I'm curious, what were your thoughts? Because I did miss last week, I'm curious, what did everybody think of the developer direct that just went by? Good, bad, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, elemental P, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau. All the above. Honestly, Arcane, probably DC's eyeballing what Marvel's doing and saying, hey, we should try that out. Thankfully, Multiverses was a step in a different direction where they tried to do their own thing, but it just did not seem to work. Dev Direct, South of Midnight, and Doom were my favorites. I really liked, I have to say, every single time I see Expedition 33, it impresses me more and more. I'm really excited, and I actually just started playing because I pulled out from the depths of the abyss. I have yanked out my Game Boy DSi, and I started playing Mario and Luigi Partners in Time, and so I've been getting that turn-based kind of... I want to get into it again. I started playing Darkest Dungeon 2 a little bit, although that game is a nightmare and I had to turn it off. Literally a nightmare. I had to turn it off because I was not doing well. But I started doing some Darkest Dungeon 2. I started doing some Partners in Time on my Game Boy DS, and I'm fixing for some of that. And every time I see it, I did watch the gameplay for Expedition, and it really does look good. I like the open world elements too, where you sort of explore around. It's a cool take on it. So I'm excited to see where that goes. Doom the Dark Age. Again, I have to take another look at Doom the Dark Ages personally, because one thing that does worry me about that is the way they're going to slow down the combat a lot. Now, Red was hinting at, again, I haven't watched the showcase, but Red was hinting at the fact that you have a lot of options that you could go in and change on the Red Wolf Renegade podcast. You can check that out Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm just curious, if you speed up the gameplay a lot, that obviously has to go with scale with the difficulty, right? If you make Doom Guy move a lot faster, but I am a little bit curious because everything does look a lot more weighty. It looks a lot heavier. It looks a lot slower, which one of the things I loved about both Doom and Doom Eternal was just how rapid fire you were moving in that. Not to say that throwing your axe, your chain shield around is not going to be an absolute blast. Didn't look slow to me at all. It almost looked just as fast as Eternal, but the gameplay is not anywhere near as vertical as that game was. That was the other thing too, right? Was the verticality of it. From the little snippets that I did see, it looked to have less verticality, which I thought added a lot, especially to Eternal, because Eternal did it really, really well. I like the analogy they use for Dark Ages as opposed to a tank for Dark Ages as opposed to a fighter jet. Thank you for the vote of confidence, Jonas. Oh, well, I am happy to be able to surprise and ideally delight. It's got a more grounded way to feel. That is the one thing I can respect about Doom the Dark Ages, though, right? I can absolutely 1000% respect that Doom the Dark Ages is taking that approach, because ultimately what it means is that you can go in and you could play Eternal, and you could absolutely love the way Eternal plays, right? Because Eternal was generally an upgrade to what Doom 2016 did. So you can go in and you can play Doom Eternal, or you can choose like, hey, no, I actually really like the feel to Doom the Dark Ages, and you can enjoy that. Sort of what Red Hook Studios did with Darkest Dungeon 1 and Darkest Dungeon 2, where they really sat down and said, hey, we want to make something where players can go in and they can say, no, I really like this version of the game, or I really like that version of the game. And it's not necessarily right or wrong, because they made them each different enough that they feel unique, that they feel special. So you can have a favorite one. And of course you can like bits and pieces from both of them. That's totally fine too. But I think I could really respect that that is the direction id is going in. But I'm just curious. I think Doom is definitely one of those games where you really need to just get it in your hands and start, like, you can't look, I would just say it's very similar to a VR game in that sense, right? You can't look at Doom or Doom Eternal and go, I mean, you could look at it and say that's sick, but you don't get it. You just don't get it, do you? You don't get it if you don't play it. That much I think we could all generally agree on, yeah? You just don't get it unless you play Doom. It's one of those games. It really relies on the feel. And I find more and more, I don't know if anybody else is this way too, but I find more and more, let me know, I find more and more, everybody, that as I get older and as I play more games, I start to feel that watching them on screen does not do the majority of them justice. Whereas previously I would look at them and I'd go, you know, I really understand how that feels. But I think Hogwarts Legacy was kind of one of those games that really did that for me, where I looked at it and I said, yeah, this looks fun. And then I played it and was like, oh, I get it. I really do. I really get it now. But the older I get, the more I feel like I need to play each of these experiences. Or maybe it's just because I'm getting tired of hearing what a bunch of people, random people on the internet say about a certain game, and I don't want my opinions to be shifted as much by them. Maybe it was when I started reviewing games for myself that really started to change over, but I don't know, does anybody else feel the same way? Maybe it's just the complexity of games these days? Perhaps. Or a combination of all the above. Most likely that. I love that they're adding accessibility stuff in Dark Ages. Of course, some are going to see it as enabling easy mode, but it really does look like you'll be able to fine-tune your experience. I've always felt, this just goes into the conversation that ties back to, like, Dark Souls, right? Which is, hey, should Dark Souls have a difficulty? Some people say no, because it takes away from the artistic feel of the game, and other people say yes, because I want to play them. They look sick. They look badass, but I want to be able to experience them for myself. And for what it's worth, I agree with both of them. I think both have very valid points. In the case of something like Doom, it always had difficulty settings. So I think this is a bit of a different scenario. But I also don't like the idea of folks... As someone who is, for example, console... I know it's not 100% related, but as someone who is generally console agnostic too, I'm like, nah, just play on whatever system you want. I feel like I should be of the opinion that studios should allow more options. But I am happy to see these studios, like in the case of Doom as well, being able to make it very customizable so you can get the experience you want to have. Same with, for example, what was it? Starfield did that in a recent update too. Which it seems like I think most Bethesda games are going to continue with that general trajectory where they sort of promote the customization of the way that you want to play, and that Starfield, instead of just having a single difficulty slider where enemies become more bullet spongy and you become more vulnerable, they decided, no, let them tweak. Like, you'll do 2 times damage to enemies, but enemies will do 1.5 times damage to you, or vice versa, right? That you each do 5 times the amount of damage to one another. So everything is just, you know, one-shot kills. You land that headshot, they're out of here. And I do like that approach a lot, personally. Does anybody have a solid reason? Other than the artistic vision, I'm curious. Anybody in chat? Does anybody in chat vehemently disagree with the concept that games should have more options for difficulty? And if so, why? I'm gonna repeat that question because I do want to hear from all of you. Is anybody vehemently opposed to the idea of games allowing for more customizability to the way that difficulty is presented? And why? Because I am curious. I know that, again, it ties back to Dark Souls, right? A lot of people will use that as the crux of their argument because that is the vision of the game. Doom looks insane. I can't wait to find all the Easter eggs again. Yeah, if you're a fan of Doom... Dom, do you still have those videos live? I'm going to go off on a limb and say yes. You can check out Just Dom. Give us more of that. Welcome, Influent, to the stream, and give us more options. Yeah, I would agree. I'm glad that other people say that. Hello, Holly, that blue number, welcome. I think certain games should have some unchangeable, but very few should have unchangeable difficulty. So I'm gonna assume you mean titles like Dark Souls, yeah? What other games would you say fall into that category, though, is the question. Maybe something like Death Stranding, perhaps? I don't know. Did Death Stranding have difficulties? I've never actually played USPS Simulator, so I can't answer to that one. King Styles, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. We're talking about Doom: The Dark Ages and just difficulty in games. A broader conversation about difficulty in games. But welcome. Good evening. Yeah, if you haven't checked out Just Dom, if it is still live on the channel, he did he found every single Easter egg in Doom Eternal. He went nuts finding all those Easter eggs. And I know the amount of effort and work that went into that. So hunting them down, developer interviews, finding them himself. It was a massive undertaking, and it's a really cool video. So if you want to see the amount of love that went into that game, you can find it through Just Dom's video. Generally, but there should be mechanics or power-ups for people to find to help so everyone can accomplish it. Be power-ups for people to find to help. Okay. Okay. Power-ups. I'm curious how power-ups would work. Because I think of too, for example, a game like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order or Star Wars Jedi Survivor, right? Which had, again, I feel like it's always going to tie back. Well, there also just has been a lot of Souls-style games that have released. Because, of course, that trend sort of hit the market. But, or maybe a game like Outlast. Well, Outlast Trials has distinct difficulties. Supermarket Simulator should have difficulty with power-ups. Could you imagine hardcore Supermarket Simulator where you're just really diving into and you have oh dear God, you have actual like Karens coming up to the register screaming at you. You need to hire a whole PR department once it starts going downhill, which it will. Trust me, I worked at a supermarket. I worked in the deli section of a supermarket before. And you would think deli clerks would be safe. We weren't safe from the scrutiny. Similar to Elden Ring, if you don't want to spend all day, you could go look for more items. But not everyone has to do it. Okay, alright, you know what? That makes sense. So more ability to get stronger in the game, which arguably just means a leveling system too, right? It just means you have a fair, proper leveling system, and someone has the patience to grind it. Don't have a problem at all. There's always a default setting which I consider the artistic vision, but we should be able to play and enjoy games however we want. They cost enough. Good point. They do. The price just went up too. $70 for a game now. That's a good way to phrase it. The default, if you want the artistic vision, that is what the default difficulty is. And if you want to tweak that on your own, then let you do it. Speaking of tweaking, honestly, I think games should have difficulty because you get a new game, you want to know the layout of the game, then go back onto it on the next system. Depends on the game. Some games benefit from customization. Yeah, true. Okay, so it seems like most of you that have answered follow along the same lines of where I lie, which is to say, that's literally the point of preset settings. That's quite literally setting, not system. Yeah, that's literally the point of preset settings. This is how the developers envision the experience, and they've tested it and they fine-tuned it. Ideally, they've done significant amounts of QA to make sure it falls in a fair balance for whether it's easy, normal, medium, hard, right? And so if you want to bounce outside of that, put those options there, but you can always get the experience. So most of you guys seem to fall in line with where I am, which is I like the customization. Which, speaking of customization, one quick little story here that I did want to get into. I apologize if my camera's lagging. My internet might be a little bit spotty, but one thing I did want to get into was actually just really, really quickly. Don't worry, we're not going to spend too much time here for those of you who are not interested. But Hogwarts Legacy just introduced mods, and they have quite a few cool ones that are coming around. For example, lots of quality of life mods. They have some new shader mods that are coming out, which are always the typical ones. Things that, like, there were restricted areas where you could fly your broom around, like on the castle grounds and through Hogsmeade and stuff, and people removed some of those settings to allow for more customization. Customization options with skin complexions and things like that. So also, you could turn your mount that you fly around on into a dragon, which is the one that they were sure to debut with. So I don't know if that's available on consoles or just PC. However, I am incredibly happy to see that modding is really spreading. Of course, Baldur's Gate 3 is going in on the modding. Bethesda Game Studios really did pioneer the ability to have mods on consoles. Baldur's Gate 3 also has it on consoles. I was speaking of Darkest Dungeon 2 as well. They allow for mods as well. Hogwarts Legacy. It's nice to see mods coming more commonly into the AAA space. Cyberpunk 2077 and The Witcher. CD Projekt Red has always sort of embraced that too. So, just really nice to see that mods continue to showcase the support, or continue to get ongoing support from different studios. And certainly something like WB Games or Avalanche, which is worked on Hogwarts Legacy, allowing it is, I think, a really strong move. And I would love to see other WB properties as well. So, for example, we know that there is a Wonder Woman game coming from Monolith, I believe, or WB Montreal. I think it's Monolith. The folks who made the Lord of the Rings, Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of Mordor, and Shadow of War. Those folks are working on a Wonder Woman game, so throw mods into that, right? We kind of got screwed by microtransactions in Shadow of War that they eventually dumped out, but if they're going to embrace modding, keep bringing it. And I would love to see other studios continue that trend as well. Would be really, really nice to see. So, good news if you're looking for a reason to return to Hogwarts Legacy, or if you haven't experienced it so far, maybe that gives you a little bit incentive. Again, the mods are kind of small for it so far, but maybe it gives you a little bit of an incentive to check it out. Another small story that I wanted to get into, in-game mods. There were already mods from third-party sources like in Nexus. In-game mods. So, yeah, the official support for them. You're right. That we don't need that. Absolutely right. It is the in-game support for them. Welcome, Red, and thank you so much for stopping by. I did the math. It'd be $109 in creation credits for over 60 mods that are achievement friendly. 60 mods. They are great mods, by the way. Thoughts? I think it depends. Look, I have actually bought some of the creations for Skyrim. I bought the Bard's College expansion. I bought there was the East Empire Company as well. I think there is really worthwhile potential in Creation Club. I don't care about achievements all that much, so whether they're achievement friendly or not, oh well, to me. I know that's a big deal for some folks. However, what I will say is $109, I don't obviously know what you're bookmarking, but I know for a fact that there are a lot I do not think is worth the value. I see a lot of mods that do go live through the Creation Club. For example, there was that issue that got raised up a while ago where somebody had realistically just paid for or got free assets, excuse me, from another thing, ported them into Creation Engine, uploaded them as a creation, and then was selling them for however much. So, you know, and some people will fall for that. Some people would absolutely buy into that, and that's just another individual just took something for free, did absolutely no work and sold it. So, I'm still a bit hesitant with creations for that reason. I think they need a stronger vetting process, absolutely. And also, I think a lot of creations. I'm not trying to knock the folks who do really work hard on these and do spend the time. Because they do. Whether you're making a house mod, or they're making a follower mod, or they're making a set of armor, people spend time on this stuff. However, what I will say is a lot of times, I think the asking price is a little bit extreme. And look, people should be paid for hard work. I'm really grateful that there's a lot of folks that still continue to do it for free. And they don't ask for anything. And they are really just doing it for fun because it's a game that they love. Dom, it's still up on the channel. All of them from main game to both DLCs will probably do the same for Dark Ages, but I'm also in talks with making some promo stuff for Dawn Walker XCD people. I would love to see you back. Dom, this was originally supposed to be our show. Dom. There you go. I hope you do come back. I'm really looking forward to that as well. I know I've been seeing you getting more active. I've been seeing it more active, and I was thinking, I was like, something going on here. Value is not determined by the work at the end of the day, but by the demand of the market. That too. That is absolutely true. You have to keep in mind how much you can make another armor mod, but and it's competition as well, right? If you have, especially because free mods are still on consoles, if you have 40 armor mods and then you're looking at one that kind of looks, it looks cool, and it's $7 or $5, and you go, right? Either that mod maker needs to put in a lot more effort to make it something special. Either it's tied to a really cool quest, or it has really special, unique effects, or maybe just a really badass look. It needs to do something a step above in order to help differentiate itself from all the other stuff that is going on. So competition, the demands of the market. And speaking of supportive, Lotus, thank you so much for the $50 super chat. And no message, just our super awesome Transformer Hippo friend here. I don't know why you don't get alerts, Lotus. It's really, but you know what? I can play this one. I can replay an old one for you right there. Thank you so much for the $50 super chat. Lotus, always coming in here, always supportive, and that is so absolutely kind of you. I cannot thank you enough. Seriously. Thank you. Thank you. And thank all of you for being here as well. Thank you all for stopping by, for hanging out today on this fellow Thursday night. It's nice to see that every stream we do, I feel like we get a couple more people in here, a couple more people stopping by, checking it out, and I hope that we can continue to grow that. So be sure to, I never really ask for this, but do be sure to just kind of like it and share it out if you don't mind. I always forget to put it on Twitter, so there you go. But no, there's definitely some really cool creations, and things like the what is it? Things like the Bard's College are absolutely the ones that I think are worth the money. And those are the types of things I wanted the first time the Creation Club came around. But anyway, happy to see more developers hopping on board with in-game mods like Hogwarts Legacy and Avalanche. Super exciting to see. And I hope more do it. But speaking of, I actually don't have a transition for this one. I don't have a transition for this one. PlayStation. PlayStation hates mods. We know that. There's your transition right there. PlayStation doesn't like mods. They hate them. They keep them off. Hate them. They hate them. They keep them off their system for God knows why, because it's PlayStation, Sony, and they can. I don't know if this is new news. Has anybody heard this? Former head of PlayStation, Yoshida, recently said that fans need to buy more remasters. You know that single player game you've really been looking forward to? Yeah, you know the one in the back of your head. You know, you're thinking of it. We got the same one in mind. I know, because we have that connection, you and I. It's not getting made because you haven't bought The Last of Us Remastered Part 2 2nd edition. It's your fault it's not getting made. At least that's what Yoshida seems to say. Not quite that way. I'm being a little bit harsh on that one. But Yoshida explained recently that these these remasters of games actually go in to help fuel the development of the single player games, because single player games are expensive to make. Naughty Dog working on something brand new instead of doing another Uncharted, or they needed a break from The Last of Us, I think we can all agree, but doing another Last of Us, these established IPs, doing something new, that's risky. It takes a lot of money, and they don't make as much as a live service possibly can. Of course, we just talked about with the opening of the show. The opening of the show, the contrast between something like Multiverses compared to Marvel Rivals, which is killing it. But I feel like I'm a lot more like this today. I don't know what these are, but there you go. Maybe it's just all the pent-up anxiety from being away for a week, and among other things. Yoshida had some funny moments in the Kind of Funny interview. Yes, I did not actually watch the interview, but I did take a look at this snippet, because this snippet, and I saw articles about this snippet, because this snippet did stand out to me in particular, just because I'm someone who's very passionate about single-player games. I think single-player games arguably make stronger experiences than a lot of multiplayer games. That's not saying multiplayer is bad. I love multiplayers. But the remasters, thank you, Jonas, you just mentioned, it helps to buffer or lower their investment risk in some ways, while also using it to fund these other titles, which is absolutely true. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know better than Yoshida, that I'm a better businessman than he is. He was the head of PlayStation Studios. I'm some guy sitting in an armchair in a neon background or a LED lit background office. We are not the same. And so the issue I do have with it, I think, is the approach that PlayStation is taking. Now, he also did mention in that same thing, I believe, he stated porting games to PC, which goes in line with, guess what? What Xbox is doing, where they're getting rid of some of those exclusive titles and people are screaming to the ceiling. But Xbox is doing it for the exact same reasons that PlayStation is opening up to the idea. Spider-Man 2 is officially out on PC, I think today, or if not today, then this week. And all of those help to generate more sales for their games. It helps to generate more revenue that they then reinvest. The problem I have with it, and I think many of you guys probably maybe do as well, maybe not everyone, is the fact that they're remastering these titles that are 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, right? We saw that with The Last of Us Part 1. We saw that with The Last of Us Part 2. We're seeing that with Horizon. These games are not that old, and they don't look that bad. In fact, they still look incredible, and there's really, if I'm being honest, no reason to feel the need to upgrade to these titles. Now, if you're talking about an Uncharted 1 remaster, that is a completely different story. Completely and utterly different. But some appreciate, there are some people out there who are going to appreciate the ability to play these games with updated fidelity and updated graphics. Where do all of you stand on, for example, like a Last of Us Part 2 remastered? Forget the game itself, right? Forget what you thought of the game in and of itself, but really just how you feel about those. Because honestly, yes, it is a lot cheaper. Here's where I sort of would want to get a little bit more insight into, one, the mindset, two, the actual financial. I'm not big on the financial side of things. I'm sort of... Alright, Red. I'm sorry I brought up The Last of Us Part 2. I know it's a sensitive... I know it's a sensitive game for you. But where was I? So, shoot, where was I? Oh, right. These titles, I'm not a big person who really... I like hearing the financials, but I don't like diving into the financials and looking at, like, the analyst reports of what studio lost 7% revenue in this quarter and blah, blah. I don't care. I'll leave that to the money folks. I am, though, a little bit curious to understand a little bit deeper on how much it actually costs to do these remasters versus how much revenue they make versus how much of it actually gets put into the other projects, right? Because just because you're doing a remaster and it is easier doesn't mean it still doesn't cost time and staff. Staff being the key, because you have to keep in mind all of those team members. Yeah, they can probably outsource a lot of the work, I'm sure. But those team members and the money that you're using to pay those could be used to just invest into a new IP in the first place, right? Not impressed with the $10 upgrade on The Last of Us on the Pro. Extremely impressed with the remaster of Horizon and Until Dawn. Until Dawn was a bit of an older game. I haven't seen the comparisons between the two, but why specifically? Like, Horizon Zero Dawn was one that I looked at and I went, nah. Until Dawn makes a little bit more sense to me, but why specifically those two games, Lotus? It depends on the game, if the game has super polished gameplay, which most of them do. Most of them are magnifique. Say what you will about The Last of Us Part 2, but the gameplay was top-notch. It doesn't need a remaster. It really doesn't. The other thing, too, is just fatigue, right? Fatigue for these titles, and honestly, fatigue for the IPs. Because when you're sort of getting inundated, I think one of the biggest mistakes for modern games is honestly... And on the part of gamers, too, is this desire to have constant titles, right? I'm not saying everybody should be waiting as long as the Elder Scrolls 6 between Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls 6. That should not be the normal amount of time, but I do think there's something inherently healthy about waiting. One, from the ability for technology to actually improve, right, so that the sequel can be better. Two, for new ideas, and honestly, three, because allowing yourself time to actually miss a title is good. It allows you time to go back to grow the fan base in a bit of a healthier way, because you're going to have a group of that community. Let's just take, for example, Horizon. You're going to have a community of people who love Horizon Zero Dawn and who love the universe of Horizon, and they're going to stick together. Or I'll use something a bit closer to home for me, the Batman Arkham games, right? The wait between Batman Arkham Asylum to City to Night wasn't too long, but it was long enough that you sort of sat back and you enjoyed engaging with those communities. It gave you time to speculate about what a sequel could be. Is there going to be a sequel at all? And then, of course, it establishes a little bit more reliance on the franchise. I don't know if reliance is the right word. Dedication towards the franchise. So now when you start coming out with, we have The Last of Us Part 2, and we have the remaster, and we have Spider-Man 2, and we have the Spider-Man remaster, and it's just, here's Spider-Man 3 coming out around the corner, and then also the Spider-Man multiplayer game that I think was canceled. But when you're just getting too much of a... There is such thing as too much of a good thing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Fuck you! Hello! Good sir, how are you? Welcome, and thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you've been doing well. And it's good to be back. It's good to be back here in my environment, chatting with all of you guys. So thank you for stopping by. Wouldn't we prefer more new games than IP rather than putting these resources and making 10-year-old games? Yeah, exactly what I was talking about. I disagree on the case of remaster / remake. It basically trying to preserve the game along with that. If we get a remaster, it helps for sequels. You don't need to preserve a 3-year-old to 5-year-old game, though. You don't need to preserve something like Uncharted 1. We have the Uncharted collection that did come out, so you could argue that was a little bit more recent. But something like Uncharted 1, that's a game that, yeah, it's not quite there yet. But I would look at that and go, we probably would want to make sure that that one stays up to date and relevant. not necessarily something like, again, I'll just keep using Last of Us as the example. I've never played on PC. I was blown away by Horizon graphics and third-person exploration. I'm using Pro connected to LG G4 OLED. I've never played on PC. I bet maybe that's a big difference too, is I primarily play on PC, right? So I do sort of get that, I do sort of get that side of things a little bit. I think the remaster for Naughty Dog helped fund their new game. I cannot wait to play. It probably does. I mean, it absolutely does, right? It absolutely does. The question is just how much. How much actually is it funding versus how much are people sort of sticking in their pockets there? Because we know these guys got deep, deep pockets. Many games we do need remasters because of the game's cliffhangers or whatever left people hanging. Wonder what will happen in the next sequel to the game. Many games we do need remasters and remakes because of games that left cliffhangers. We need remasters because a game left a cliffhanger? No, we need a sequel. We need a sequel if it left on a cliffhanger. Why would you want a remake? Because presumably, well, a remake makes sense, but a remaster of it would just have the same cliffhanger. Anyway, so it's your fault if your favorite new single player IP does. Again, my main concern for that is really the oversaturation of a certain franchise or a certain IP, as well as would the resources really be better to just go, probably, I mean, we have to assume they're making enough money where it's getting reinvested fairly. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt on that. But that's all for that. That's all for PlayStation. And we are going to get into our big topic for today, which is a fly on the, not a fly on the wall, a little mouse has whispered that BioWare is not doing so hot, unfortunately. So recent developments at BioWare have revealed to us there's a significant amount of shifting going on between layoffs, people leaving, as well as just ultimately, well, a lot of business speak that is cause to get folks nervous. Now, if anybody has watched my channel and have heard my takes for any amount of time, you will know that I am one of the getting close here. You come in. Yep, there you go. I'm not the type of person that starts banging on the drama drums. I'm the one that's usually sitting back here going, it's fine. It's fine. Relax. Everything will be okay. Right? And this is a case where even I have to look at and get a little bit nervous. So, Karen Weeks and Trick Weeks are two of the major names that are announcing their departure. It's unclear if it's voluntary or if it's due to layoffs, but Trick Weeks, of course, has been at BioWare for a very long time. Now, they, have always been pretty good with their writing up until, of course, I would say the Veilguard. Now, we don't know exactly what part of the Veilguard they worked on. The assumption that people jump to is that they worked on the character of Tash. And, of course, that is the infamous character where just really poor writing, really poor delivery, and I think arguably even the conflict between her versus the traditions of the Quinari, we had something similar with Dorian and Dragon Age Inquisition. I'm not going to get into this whole thing, but there has been good writing in the past, and I actually didn't realize this. I was going through Reddit today to just see what other people were saying about this general departure when it comes, because I'm trying to navigate the conversation of DEI a little bit fairly, because everyone will want to just, again, this is where I'm gonna sit up on my high chair here for a little bit and explain why I think I'm better than why I'm better than all the other YouTubers. I am going to say why I think I'm a little bit less dramatic, because a lot of people will want to look at someone like Trick Weeks and go, well, they are the issue. They put in all this DEI BS and nonsense and crap into the game, and that's why the game sucked and is terrible and blah blah. Without respect or regard to all of the past stuff that they worked on, and without the realization that it might just be a sign of the times that we're in. Maybe it was something coming from a little bit higher up, but for example, someone posted on Reddit, I saw this comment that there's an issue in Mass Effect 2 or 3. Can't remember which one. I want to say 2. Red, if you're here, I need you to... I think it's 2. There's a Quarian that has lost their credit chit. And that credit, and you go around and you try to find out where it went, and then the Quarian is getting accused. For those of you who don't know Mass Effect, Quarians are kind of seen as like scavengers, a little bit scummy and schemy, and so they're being accused of stealing someone's credit shit, excuse me. And realistically, what that was is commentary on, and I didn't realize this, but it was commentary on, and the fact that I didn't realize this is a good thing. Commentary on how I think it was the Muslim community was getting treated at a certain point in time, probably after 9/11. But the idea being that that was strong subliminal writing, right? I was able to play through, and I didn't necessarily put those two things together, but I still got the message of what they were trying to get across, which is, hey, ultimately it boils down to don't judge a book by its cover, right? So you can have nuance in your writing, and then the Veilguard took it to the complete extreme and said, see the message? It's right here. Look at it. Look at the message. I'm the message. Look right here, right? And that's not a good way. That's not a good way to do any writing. And that's how Veilguard handled it. So... And I respect the stories that they were trying to tell, and I respect the characters that they were trying to project completely. I respect it entirely, but there's a better way that you can do it that more strongly represents both the story you're trying to tell and the people that it's trying to represent. So, Trick Weeks and Karen Weeks both are gone from the studio. The language that they used is the scariest part about this. I'll look at chat. I'll read chat in a little bit, so get your thoughts out. Start getting them up about all this. The quote that they said was they want a more agile and more focused studio. Now, some team members have been moved to different places in EA. If there were job openings that they were able to apply to, they encouraged them to apply to shift them around. Ladies and gentlemen of the chat, when a company says that they are looking for a more agile studio, that means layoffs. And they've actually used this language before. Now, Dragon Age The Veilguard, it has been reported that it made 50% less than what EA's expectations were. I think EA was expecting 3 million units sold, and it sold approximately 1.5 million. And look, even if their forecast was way off or way higher than it should have been, 1.5 million units isn't bad, but for a game the size, scope, and scale that Dragon Age was, especially considering the previous Dragon Age game was Game of the Year, that is a big oof. Now concerns are shifting around to Mass Effect 5, because Mass Effect 5, that studio is smaller. There's two sides to this, actually. The one thing is we've been, and I'm going to get to chat in just a second, we have been in these discussions. We've talked about in relation to Bethesda Game Studios. And a lot of folks left because the team just got too big. And they were not able to make the types of games they wanted to make because there became an increasing level of bureaucracy, number one, and two, just an increase in bloat of middle management. When middle management starts getting really, really filled up, yes, it does start to slow down the process of things by quite a bit. So on the one hand, the optimist in me wants to look at this and go, maybe they were actually too bloated and this is a good move. The pessimist in me says we've had Anthem, we've had Mass Effect Andromeda, and now we've had Dragon Age The Veilguard. And none of those paint a pretty picture for the future of the studio from a company that really does enjoy shutting down whenever things start going wrong. Now, arguably, you could have said, well, after Mass Effect Andromeda, things were going wrong. After Anthem, things were going wrong. Because, let's just be real, all right? Let's take a step back. Anyone who's trying to freak out and say, BioWare's dead! This is the last chance for BioWare! We've been hearing that since after Anthem. We've been hearing that story play out again and again and again. That being said, like I'm not the type of person, as I started this segment off with, I'm not the type of person that looks at these types of situations and starts banging on my drama drums. This time I am a little bit nervous. Let's get over to chat for a bit. All right. The layoffs are sad to see, but at the same time, we got to be real and say the writing that shipped with the game was subpar. 1,000%. Now, the question is... Oh, this is also worth mentioning, too. There was something... I forgot the name of the woman who posted... Or man. I think it was a woman who posted this on Blue Sky, where she basically said... she had already left BioWare. She's been gone from BioWare for a couple of years now. But she stated, she's like, no, none of the writers at original BioWare are there anymore. Let that sink in. Former BioWare dev. She knows the team. She worked as a part of it. We're not talking about that she left 10 years ago. She was there, I think, into 2018. None of the writers are there anymore that worked on these original games. So, that one is a little bit nervous. Sabuki, welcome! Thanks for stopping by. How have you been? How are you? It's good to see you here. And thank you so much for joining. I hope you're doing well. The writers did confirm they were laid off. Oh, they did confirm they were laid off. Okay, so there you go. They're fired. And again, I have to imagine with this type of situation, right? BioWare, or EA, is aware that the biggest problem with that game was the overshot, the ham-fisted DEI. And again, DEI is not a bad thing. It's about the way it's portrayed. And it wasn't portrayed well because that does an injustice to the communities that it is trying to talk about. And what ultimately happened is they probably had to point a finger and say, who wrote this character? Trick Weeks scared raises their hand. And then EA goes, here's a box. They just pick it up off the floor and they go, here's your box. Clean it off. It's insane to me because the Weeks used to be good writers. They wrote some of BioWare's most memorable characters. Exactly. And I don't know what changed, but there you go. Something did change. So it's basically Ferengi from Star Trek. I need to watch Star Trek. I'm sorry. I know Star Wars. Can't do Star Trek. Inquisition sold like around... Oh, but the problem with Veilguard is it honestly felt like forced messaging. Very uncomfortable game to touch. Veilguard should have been more like the previous games. Yes. That's exact. Yeah, we're on the same page. Inquisition sold around 5 million in its first month. Makes Veilguard look even worse by comparison. Yeah. Yeah. Veilguard... Or Dragon Age Inquisition did well. Of course, after it won Game of the Year, I'm sure it did even better. So 1.5 million copies is, again, that's a lot of copies sold. Not for this. And again, that's why I do get a little bit nervous. BioWare can't continue to put out these subpar games, and they do need to really hone in on the writing. It's a shame that all of this boils down to writing. I do believe that Mass Effect is, and I did talk a little bit about this. One video that kind of is going to now age poorly is my most recent one that I did do on Mass Effect, because I explicitly called out the fact that Trick Weeks did work on some of these really great characters. They're still working on the next Mass Effect, and now, of course, they're not there anymore. So that video arguably aged not so well. But what I can say is one thing in that video I still think holds true is that Mass Effect 5 is one of the first games that's hopefully the more agile development and moving people around is actually, if we just take it at face value, what they're going with. We know not to take things at face value from companies like EA. But there you go. Do with that what you will. However, ideally, one thing that I did mention in that video that still holds true is Mass Effect 5 is one of the only games for BioWare recently that can symbolize a bit of a fresh start, in the sense that you had Anthem and its really horribly troubled development that bled into Mass Effect Andromeda, or vice versa. I always mentally forget which came first. Those two troubled developments then tied into Dragon Age The Veilguard, which then of course had like reset its development 2 or 3 different times. And that's why they said we're not doing any DLC. They released it and they said we're done. Hopefully, and this is the point I made in that video, this means that Mass Effect 5 can have smooth sailing going into its development. And I don't know if this more agile studio is a part of that, but there you go. Have you heard about Arma Reforger? Been blowing up recently the past week. The servers have been constantly booted offline. Arma's a game that I've always wanted to try, but I've never gotten into. Same with, well, Arma, because Arma and DayZ, those were like, they were basically, one was just a mod for the other, right? DayZ was a mod for Arma. I've wanted to try DayZ. It's Jover. BioWare really is straight up done, man. It's Jover. Yeah, I think, again, I've said it 7 times, but I am worried about what happens with BioWare. Story, lore, and more to IP history have lost their IPs, lore, story, and more. If companies cared about their IPs and franchise, they need to listen to the true fan bases. That is one of the big issues that we're seeing, not just from BioWare, but it's from a lot. I mean, you could tie this back to Bethesda too. You could tie it to Battlefield, right? Battlefield is a franchise. You go, oh, well, what? Maybe a little bit less familiar with some people. I love Battlefield, but they started trying to throw in the operator type stuff, and they started trying to throw in the things that Call of Duty was going in on. And Battlefield fans just took a step back and went, what is this garbage? Because the fact is, you don't, and I think Starfield is another great example of this. You don't make a great game by, I guess it's a bit redundant. I could just make this super easy. A game made for everybody is a game made for no one, right? Plain and simple. Bethesda did do in Starfield, Bethesda did a lot of things that worked really well for Bethesda fans. Going back to the traits, going back to the persuasion system, and having the dialogue with the silent protagonist. I would argue the cities in Starfield, when you're actually in the cities and the settlements, was actually pretty good content there. Not all of it, but it was pretty good. And then they decided to say, hey, we're also going to do all of this other stuff that ideally will appeal to more people, in the procedural generation and the endless planets. And you go, well, that's not what Bethesda fans like. That's not what you tried to do for Skyrim. And Skyrim, massively popular and successful game, to nobody's surprise anymore. That's why they've released it 30 times. So, ultimately, if you please your core audience, I think Dragon's Dogma 2 is a great example of that, which was, as far as I know, Dragon's Dogma 2 did pretty damn well. But that was a title that it knew what it was, it stayed in its lane, it knew its niche, it knew its audience, it appealed to that audience. And then people from the outside look in at that and go, they're having fun over there. Those guys are having fun. I want to have fun. And then you just scoot your way over and you check it out and you realize, hey, this actually is a really cool game. But it all starts by appease the audiences before we get out our torches and pitchforks. It all starts by appealing to that core audience that can then spread it. And the reason why appealing to the core audience, I think this goes without saying, maybe it's a bit redundant for most of you out there, but the reason why is because then you could do some of those more hardcore mechanics. You could do more of those specialty things. Look at Baldur's Gate 3, right? It's a turn-based tactical RPG that's based on Dungeons and Dragons. And it's not the type of thing that would appeal to everybody, but a lot of folks were willing to check it out because it said, let's make a game for D&D players. This is a game for folks who love D&D, who love isometric RPGs. And then other people who just like RPGs and games with choice and consequence sort of look at it and go, oh. And then they check it out and enjoy it for themselves. And now, hey, you got new fans of isometric style titles. So there you go. You have the name change from Dreadwolf to Veilguard. It was a very bad sign. Red flags were seen. Yeah, and look, I will admit, I'll be the first to admit when I was wrong. I looked at all of those and I said, hey, it's probably fine, right? They're doing it for the... I need to believe that they're doing all of this for the right reasons. I do that with most games, though. I'm the type of person... Look, I am the type of person who I would rather get excited for a game and then it come out and be bad. And I'll just go, it is what it is. I'll move on to the next one. But I enjoy getting excited. I enjoy getting hyped up. I enjoy the thrill, the build-up. That's just as exciting sometimes as the actual game. If not, sometimes more exciting than the actual game. If you look at something like Starfield, which is really how my channel grew. But, yeah, now, absolutely. Well, at the time, I was like, oh, they have to be changing it. They're doing, like, the kind of Disney-fied, Marvel-esque, you know, thing because that's the direction they're going from. And I could sort of look at all those things and try to rationalize them in my head. And now I look back and go, and I'll admit that I was wrong on all of it. But again, I would rather have gotten excited for the game. And then just move on with my life. It's a video game! It's a video game! I don't know. Basically, cautiously optimistic about Exodus by Archetype instead of thinking too much about Mass Effect right now. Exodus, Floydster, I just made... Floydster, welcome, by the way. Have you checked out my video on Exodus? I'm excited as well. But I'm also nervous. I'm nervous for the same reason that I was skeptical about Immortals of Avium. Just because it is sort of a... Yes, you have a lot of talent behind it. But that doesn't necessarily equate to a good game. Right? Look at Peppa Pig. It started basic, but now Peppa can go all around the world. And Peppa, how did it do that? Lotus? How did Peppa Pig do it? Because Peppa Pig came in, it knew what it wanted to be, and then it grew from there because people want to... Look, folks want to feel part of things. We as humans want to feel part of a community. We want to feel involved. We want to feel liked. We want to feel respected. And so it's hard to be the outlier. But the irony of it is sometimes being the outlier is the thing that brings more folks into your community. And I'm getting very dramatic and motiony about it because my inner Italian is coming out. My inner Italian is coming out because I got Italian stuff on my mind. Don't ask what that is. Don't ask what that means. Don't worry about it. I hope Avowed will bring many people to CRPGs. They're so good. I'm excited for Avowed. I have a lot of confidence. I had a lot of again, I usually have confidence in games. I usually look at things optimistically. Exactly, Red Spaghetti. But I was a person who looked at Avowed and I went, yeah, I'm down for this. I'm into it. I like the way the combat looked. I like that they took the things I wanted to see in Elder Scrolls and they brought it into, for example, just the more tactical combat with the dodging, the way that spells work, being able to use a sword and a spell at the same time, which I don't know why Skyrim took that out. I liked a lot of what I saw, the parrying and stuff like that. I liked a lot of what I saw with Avowed as far as the combat goes. And I am excited to see where they go. And it seems like the general opinion towards Avowed has sort of shifted around quite a bit. I was the sidelines for watching Baldur's Gate 3, And now it's one of my favorite games. Sips, I'm glad that you're experiencing it because it's one of the best RPGs ever made. I still think Divinity 2 is the best. Probably because it was my first game from Larian, so it's just always... But I understand why Divinity 2 is a little bit harder for folks to get into. Because you don't have, like, the face cams sitting there. You know, you don't have those dialogue cameras. All of that is just absolutely gone with you just seeing everything from top down. I've been excited for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, but I heard it's getting a lot of bad press. I don't know to believe the rumors being spread. Has it been? I haven't seen a lot of bad press. I haven't seen a lot of bad press. Unreal does have a lot of performance issues. Isn't that that's like the big thing with Unreal, isn't it? Is always performance. Unreal games launch and then they need a couple patches to get started. I'm Stutter City. Sorry, folks. I forgot to make sure that my internet was functioning clearly before today's stream. But that was actually the two things I had for today. Those were the two main things I wanted to talk about to get out. And yeah, any other thoughts about Mass Effect 5? Mass Effect 5, look, we're all hoping for the best. We want a good Mass Effect game. I'm most nervous about the writing. I'm most nervous about the writing because you're dealing with legacy characters. You don't have an Andromeda situation this time around where you're dealing with Ryder. And if I don't like Ryder, it's fine because you're not effing with Shepard, Liara, Garrus, Tali, whoever might return. Now you are. Now you're messing with them. And none of those writers are there. You have the original, you have a lot of executive leadership. And that's still true. While the writing team is completely different, maybe some people are excited about that because we have seen a decline in BioWare's writing. So perhaps getting some other people in there is good. If they're junior writers, maybe there's potential, right? All it takes is one person to really come in with brilliant ideas, some unknown name and now finally get their name out there, right? We don't have someone like Michael Kirkbride coming out from, Michael Kirkbride had to start from something. So very well you might have some young writers that will have the talent to come in and fill that role. I just want Shep. You're getting Shep. Don't worry, you'll get Shep. About 11 days ago is when he talked about the controversy stuff. What controversy stuff? And who talked about? Oh, Unreal 5 is always stunning. Gotcha, Influent. Yeah, so I'm really just worried about the writing, and I'm worried because you're dealing with legacy characters. That's honestly my biggest concern. Hopefully they'll be able to adapt well enough. Yeah, and hopefully, look, I mean, I would like to think that with what's his name? Gosh, I can't remember. Oh gosh, Michael Gamble. Because Michael Gamble is the executive producer, and he obviously has history with Mass Effect. You know, if he's executive producing well, and he's really putting a stamp on things, and he's been there since Mass Effect 2, and if he's really sort of leading at the helm of all of this, then maybe. But of course, we'll have to wait and see. So, all right. Last couple comments here. Don't bring in junior writers. Bring back original writers. They're the only ones who dealt with Mass Effect and junior writers. Otherwise, we'll have the Veilguard situation. Yes, but you look at something again. You look at something like Trick Weeks, who is now who got laid off from BioWare, and you think to yourself, well, he excuse me, I apologize. They wrote really brilliant characters. What happened in Veilguard? They were the lead writers, right? They were the top, the creme de la creme, the cat's meow as far as the writing goes for some of these characters. You know, they wrote Garrus, I think. And then Garrus in Mass Effect 3 got taken over by someone else, but so these were lead writers who and they were writers who worked on Dragon Age The Veilguard, also worked on the final DLC, Trespasser. Was it Trespasser? Was the final one for Dragon Age Inquisition, which was some of the best part of Dragon Age Inquisition, was that DLC. And there were writers who worked on that who worked on Veilguard. So you have some of those. And you think to yourself, well, how did you work on that DLC and then you get to Veilguard? Like, just where did it go? And it leaves a lot to question. But again, I understand the hesitance of hiring junior writers. But at the same time, all of those Daniel Vavra, head writer, Kingdom Come Delivered 2. I really like Daniel because I followed him really closely from when they were doing Kingdom Come Deliverance 1, the first one, and they were doing it on Kickstarter. That was a game that was kickstarted, and it did really well on Kickstarter, and I followed all of those development updates. I liked following Daniel in his career, but yeah, these writers need to start somewhere, and I would love for, I think my ideal situation as far as writing goes is to see one of these writers who might be a junior step in and really put their stamp on something, and at the end of the game when everyone goes, man, I really loved that mission, or I really loved that character, and then there's just one person who's like, that was me, and then sort of helps them fill in some of that role, fill in some of that to help build BioWare new. Build BioWare back. The BBB. Hashtag BBB. Build BioWare back. New writer. Maybe? Please? We'll see. If you have the original writers of Mass Effect who cared for Mass Effect and know about Mass Effect, those are the people who should be the only ones to work on Mass Effect, not juniors. Well, keep in mind that ideally the juniors are the people who grew up with Mass Effect and played through all of Mass Effect and really love Mass Effect. And think of like mods for Fallout, right? There's some really, really good written quest mods for Fallout or Elder Scrolls. And these are just people who are fans. These are just people who love these series to death. And those are the folks that you want to come in and step in. And they say, I really want to write because I am the person who has the Mass Effect helmet on my back shelf. And I bought Mass Effect 4 times. And I've beaten it 8 times. And I've done every single choice. And I've done every single Renegade run, Paragon run. I've let these characters die. I let these characters live. I've read through the wikis, and those can be junior writers, right? It's not just folks who wrote the folks who wrote these really great characters and those really great storylines are not the only fans of the game. They're not the only fans of the game. Maybe as creative consultants, sure, but they will return as full-time writers. There's many things to consider: burnout, different creative ambitions, wanting to move on to something else. And yeah, and just keeping in mind too, I mean, the burnout is a huge one, and just keeping in mind too that anybody who's interested in writing, I highly recommend you check out Olin Rogers. He has a YouTube channel. You can find it, Olin Rogers. He's the person behind one of my favorite series, Final Space. He also just did a short called Godspeed, and any video where he kind of talks about his writing process. Good writing comes from personal stories, right? That's why when we talk a little bit about inclusivity and DEI in gaming, the conversation with those stories often is, well, what I don't think gets talked about enough is it's not subliminal. And it's not nuanced in the writing, but at the same time, they're telling a story that's personal to them. a good writer can take those stories and make it more universal. But it needs to be something that has had a massive impact. For example, one of my favorite things from Olin is he talks about a show called The Lion's Blaze. And I can't remember if it was his brother or really close friends, but the concept of The Lion's Blaze, there's a short on YouTube you could watch for free, or like a pilot episode, if you will, on YouTube for The Lion's Blaze. And I don't remember if it was a friend or a family member, but they used to play video games. The concept of it is that something, you know, a bunch of characters get sucked into an arcade game machine. And Olin was writing this from a place of, what if this is... I'm sitting next to my best friend or my brother or whoever it was. What if this is the last time I ever get to play this game with this friend? And then he imagined that they get trapped into this video game, and that way that friend or that family member could live forever, because now they're in the game. They can't die in the game. They could respawn. They have extra lives. There's more time. And that's a really personal and intimate story. And if you watch the pilot episode, that's not immediately what you think about. Because it's surrounded by this other whole lighthearted adventure with anecdotes and stories and tales and character moments and development and nuance that appeals to a lot more people, that I can take away a different meaning from it than you can, or you, or you, or you, or you. We can all take away different meanings from it. And that's the beauty of art. The beauty of art is not in ham-fisting down a message. So if the reason why I bring all this up is a really convoluted and long way to say, if those writers who worked on the original trilogy have told their stories and they've poured their hearts out into this universe, and they've left in their mark with the moments, that whether it was a quest line, whether it was an environment that you visit, whether it was a character or a companion that you bring along, they might not have any more of their personal stories to share within this universe, which means we're not actually going to get the quality of writing just because they did it in Mass Effect 1 or they did it in Mass Effect 2. Does that make sense? Was that a really well put together, cohesive argument? And make me feel horrible about it and tell me why it wasn't. Now, you can do that in the comment section below. And in... But there you go. I don't know. I feel like the junior writers need to be on constant watch. They need to be guided. Junior writers need to be guided. Absolutely, 100%. I'm not saying just let them run willy-nilly and amok, right? That's not how it works. That's not how it ever works. Or it ever should work. You're not going to say, hey, we're hiring you. How many years? What have you worked on? And the guy goes, I've written for one episode of NCIS. And they're like, oh, what'd you do? I wrote the scene, but it got cut. But I wrote it, and they were considering using it. Like, you're not going to take that guy and go, all right, congratulations, we want you to plan out the whole second arc of the game. Here's what we have, the vision for it, and you need to flesh out all the little in-between moments. That's not how that works. So they need to have a guiding hand, but you also need to give them the freedom to build into.
You let that impression where I worked on a little tiny snip of the game, and it got canceled out. But then I went and I wrote a little story about.
That was deep and very thoughtful. I'd like to watch some more 15-20 minute thought pieces. I've been very inspired by Legendary Drops. I'm sure that you've probably heard that name before. It's a content creator that just absolutely exploded, and deservedly so. And he's able to put together some real... Uncle Derek, is that you? He's able to put together some just really beautifully crafted video essays of sorts. And I watched something like that. It's one of those things where he's so unbelievably articulate, Arcane. It's one of those things where I watch something like that, and then the imposter syndrome just completely and utterly sets in. And I'll start scripting and writing out or not all of, but a portion of what I want to say. And then I'll just boil it down to, this doesn't have a point. Like, there's no thesis to this. This isn't coherent. This isn't organized. This isn't smart enough. This isn't adding anything new to the conversation. Ultimately, that's all just getting stuck in my own head. Things like this do help, though. And thank you, Slowlog, for bringing that up, because that does help as well. Things where I can sit down, and that's also why I sort of wanted to do a solo podcast, which was really inspired by Luke Stevens and how he does his things, because I really like Luke Stevens and how he puts out his synopsis videos. Not synopsis, he puts together like recapped videos where he sort of trims down some of the fat, uploads it as its own individual video, but it's pulled from the live streams that he does. And you could hear how he's able to articulate his points as well. And part of the reason why I wanted to do some of the solo podcasting was because I wanted to try to explore that. And I wanted to try to develop exactly that side of, hey, I can be, maybe not 100% of the time, right? I don't think anybody can 100%. I can be insightful enough to sit down for a topic for 5 to 7 to 10 minutes and just articulate and work on and practice articulating the points that I want to make about whatever it is, whether it's writing in games or the state of a studio or the performance of whatever. Exactly, Arcane. But anyway, thank you, Solog, for it. Give him a director. Exactly. Give him a director. Give me a director. Sips, you want to be my director? Let me be my director. I can't pay you, though. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here tonight. It was a really great show. I liked having not as many topics as well. And somehow you guys were able to drag out a lot longer than I thought I was going to. I honestly thought this would be an hour-long stream. Don't regret a second of the time that I've spent. Excuse me. Don't regret a second of the time that I've spent with each of you. It's always a good night when I get to spend it with each and every one of you. Thank you, Lotus Esprit, as well, for your very generous $50 super chat. It always does mean a lot how supportive you are. It's supportive for all of you being here. If you stop by for a little bit, please do consider leaving a like on the stream on your way out, just because, hey, lets me know. And let me know your thoughts. Of course, I'm always open to feedback, changing things up, switching it, making it better. I want to make sure that this show continues to grow and evolve. It doesn't stagnate, because stagnation is bad. There's your articulate points for the night. Thank you, everybody, for the great show. You can find me every week that I can at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over here. And if you want more content or you want to look at my face more, check me out over at the Renegade Realm Podcast, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over on Red Wolf Renegades channel. Thank you, guys. It was a cozy time. Cozy. I didn't have tea this week, but I got through the show. You guys all energized me. You see that? You all energized me. You kept me energized. I didn't need caffeine. I just needed a little dose of all of you. Alright, that's all I got. I still didn't put in the ending soon screen, so I'm going to stand here and awkwardly stare. You know what? We'll do it this way. I'll awkwardly zoom in on me before I hit let's go to this. Oh, there we go. Let's go over here. I'll awkwardly zoom in while I wait. While I wait to make sure that there's no latency, or the latency catches up before I hit the end stream button, because I didn't put in the ending soon screen yet. So we're just going to keep getting nice and close. I wish that all of us could get this close. Not actually, that'd be probably a little weird. So ignore everything I'm saying at this point of the show. Just look into my eyes. Look at these big bushy caterpillars over right up here. Thank you guys for being here. So long, everybody. Smooches.